Let's transition and let's go to the NFL as Cam Newton had some interesting comments on Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, and Dak Prescott. Take a listen for yourself.
Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, and really, Dak Prescott. These are game managers. They're not difference makers.
When you say game manager, I'm not asking you to go out and win the game. I'm just asking you not to lose.
Not to lose the game. Exactly. Listen, I don't give a damn what you do. You don't have to score every time. You just don't have to throw a pick every time either. If we're going to really call a spade, there's a difference between managers of the game and difference makers of a game.
Those were Cam Newton's comments, I should say controversial comments that were on his podcast. This podcast is the 4th and 1 podcast with Cam Newton. And so, first and foremost, when I look at this situation with Cam Newton and dissect his comments, the first thing I want to get out the way, because I watched and listened to people's reactions to Cam Newton. And I heard people talk about how, Cam Newton talking about Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, and Dak Prescott, at least they're in the NFL. He's a backup quarterback who last time he was in the NFL was a backup. Like, he's not even in the league anymore to be speaking on what's going on with current quarterbacks. I heard some people even talk about how Cam Newton got benched for Mac Jones when he was in New England. And that's where I want to start first and where I want to go first. Do y'all know who the hell Cam Newton is? Cam Newton, this is in his career at being a quarterback in college and in the NFL. Cam Newton, he won an NFL MVP back in 2015. He was the Offensive Player of the Year as well in 2015. He's a 3-time Pro Bowl quarterback. He won 2 national championships at the University of Auburn. Okay? He won a Heisman Trophy in 2010. But let's look at his statistics as a quarterback in the NFL, shall we? Cam Newton, 194 touchdowns, 123 interceptions, 32,382 passing yards, completing 60% of his passes. Cam Newton is one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in NFL history, and he's a top 20 quarterback of all time. Cam Newton is more than qualified to be able to critique and criticize current NFL quarterbacks. People are really critiquing Cam instead of actually critiquing and talking about his assessment. Instead of us discussing his assessment on Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, and Dak Prescott, instead of talking about that, we're talking about Cam Newton as the individual. And people talking about Cam like Cam was some bum. Cam Newton was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in his prime with the Carolina Panthers. Now, before I get into whether or not I agree with Cam and his assessment on these so-called game managers, it's a show that I watch called The Herd. It's Colin Cowherd's show on Fox Sports. Jason McIntyre was in for Colin, and he was discussing Cam Newton's comments on Purdy, Goff, Tagovailoa, and Prescott. And McIntyre said that Dak Prescott has had a better career than Cam Newton. And I thought to myself, what the hell has McIntyre been watching over the last 10 years? Because Cam Newton had a better career than Dak Prescott had. Now, when you look at their numbers, right? Let's look at their numbers in their career. Cam Newton, his career record as a quarterback is 75, 68, and 1. Dak Prescott's record is 71 and 39. But let's remember, Dak Prescott is playing for a better organization than what Cam played with in Carolina. The Cowboys organization is a better organization than the Panthers organization. So that matters, and that is a factor when you compare quarterbacks and their accomplishments and accolades. Let's go to completion percentage. Cam completed 60% of his passes in his career. Dak Prescott has completed 67% of his passes. So I'll give Dak the edge in completion percentage. Now, Dak Prescott, he averages 259 passing yards per game. Cam averaged 219 passing yards per game. I would say that Dak Prescott was a better pocket passer than Cam Newton, but he was never the athlete that Cam Newton was in his prime. Do y'all understand what Cam Newton was doing in Carolina? The year when the Panthers went to the Super Bowl, the year when the Panthers were 15 and 1, do y'all know who Cam Newton's best receiver and number one option on that Panthers football team was? Y'all know who it was? Ted Ginn. Ted Ginn. That was the best receiver on that Carolina Panthers team that went 15 and 1 and got to the Super Bowl. Dak Prescott has had the luxury of playing with the likes of Dez Bryant, CeeDee Lamb, but yet McIntyre says that Prescott has had a better career than Cam Newton. Makes no sense. It makes no sense. Also, not only has Dak Prescott had more weapons than Cam Newton ever had. Now, real quick, too, I'm going to say this. Cam Newton did play with Steve Smith. Steve Smith played in the NFL for 16 years. When Cam Newton came into the NFL in 2011, Steve Smith was entering his 11th season in the NFL. So Steve Smith wasn't in his prime anymore. He was still a good receiver, but he wasn't great anymore. And that was the best receiver Cam has ever played with, Steve Smith. And he was out of his prime. Again, Dak played with Dez Bryant and CeeDee Lamb. Both receivers who are number one receivers. So, also, has Dak Prescott ever won an NFL MVP? Now, he might win MVP this year, but even if he won MVP this year, he's never had the career that Cam Newton had, considering that Prescott has never even reached an NFC championship game. In one season, Cam Newton did more than what Dak Prescott has ever done throughout his career. Talk to me when Dak Prescott first wins an NFL MVP and second reaches not the Super Bowl, but at least an NFC championship. And then we could talk about whether or not his career is comparable to a Cam Newton. But I had to address that. Cam had a better career than Dak Prescott. Now, let me get to these game managers that Cam Newton was talking about. Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, and Dak Prescott. I agree with Cam Newton on 75% of what he said about these four being game managers. Because this year, aside, I would say Dak Prescott's been way more than a game manager. This year, Dak Prescott is balling. He really, really is. So far this year, Dak Prescott, 28 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, over 3,500 passing yards. Dak Prescott arguably is having the best season of his career. He's playing some great football this year, for sure. So I don't think Dak Prescott has been a game manager this season. But I agree with Cam Newton about Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, and Jared Goff. And let's go down the list. Let's talk about Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy this year, 25 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 3,553 passing yards, and he's completing 70% of his passes. I know Brock Purdy is leading in some major categories at the quarterback position. I know Brock Purdy, since he's been in the NFL, Brock Purdy His record as a starter is 15-3. His career record is 15-3. But, folks, do you believe that Brock Purdy would be what he is if he didn't have Kyle Shanahan as his head coach? Do you believe that Brock Purdy would be playing the way that he's playing if he didn't have Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle? Wait. We got evidence. We got evidence as to how Purdy struggled when he didn't have Deebo Samuel, when he didn't have Trent Williams, an all-pro tackle. We got evidence. You know what happened in those 3 games without Deebo Samuel, without Trent Williams? The 49ers were 0-3. It was the worst part of the season for the 49ers. That's when they played their worst football. And they had failed to 5-3 before their bye week after they got blew out by the Bengals. So if Brock Purdy didn't have an all-pro tight end in George Kittle, if he didn't have an all-pro receiver in Deebo Samuel, if he didn't have an all-pro tackle in Trent Williams, if he didn't have an all-pro running back in Christian McCaffrey, how good would Brock Purdy be? Again, can Brock Purdy play the quarterback position? Absolutely. Is he an upgrade over Jimmy Garoppolo? Absolutely. Are the 49ers a better football team with Brock Purdy compared to what they were with Jimmy Garoppolo? Absolutely. But Brock Purdy is not a game changer. He's a game manager. Okay, let's talk about Tua Tagovailoa. Tua Tagovailoa this year, he has 24 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 3,697 passing yards. He's completing 70% of his passes this year. When I look at Tua Tagovailoa, how good was Tua Tagovailoa before Tyreek Hill arrived in Miami? I'll tell you how good he was. In 2021, this is without Tyreek Hill, Tua went 16 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 2,600 passing yards. And remember, before Tyreek Hill arrived in Miami, former head coach Brian Flores, he was trying to recruit Tom Brady to Miami. He was trying to recruit Deshaun Watson to Miami. Okay? Like Brian Flores wasn't sold on Tua Tagovailoa. Tua Tagovailoa has had the success that he's had in 2022 and in 2023 because of Tyreek Hill. He would not be playing as great as he's playing if he didn't have Tyreek Hill. And you know what? Less than a week ago, we had another example as to how Tua struggles when Tyreek Hill is not in the lineup. This is on a Monday night, week 14, going up against the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans, whose season is over. Tua Tagovailoa, he goes 23 of 33, great completion percentage, 240 passing yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. His quarterback rating was 90.5. He got outplayed by Will Levis in the fourth quarter. Now, for the game, Will Levis did throw an interception, so he had more turnovers in that game than Tua had, but he had more passing yards than Tua had, and he had a better fourth quarter than Tua had. So before Tua got Tyreek Hill in Miami, and before Mike McDaniel became the head coach for the Miami Dolphins, how good was Tua? It was questions about whether or not Tua is the franchise quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Tua, similar to Brock Purdy, is also not a game changer, but a game manager. Let's talk about Jared Goff. Look at Jared Goff this year. Jared Goff, 21 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 3,449 passing yards. He's completing 67% of his passes. I look at Jared Goff. I feel like Jared Goff started off the season playing very, very well. But over the last few weeks, Jared Goff has not been playing well. He hasn't been playing well, and he's been turning the ball over at a high level. Against the Bears last week, Jared Goff had 2 interceptions. He also fumbled the football as well on a fumbled snap. So we've seen Jared Goff have moments where he plays some good football, but he's also had his moments where he plays bad football. Now, Jared Goff did reach a Super Bowl with the LA Rams, but they lost. What happened when the LA Rams traded for Matthew Stafford, a quarterback who I view as more than a game manager? He's a game changer. What happened? Oh, Sean McVay and the LA Rams won the Super Bowl. They won the Super Bowl. They just won the Super Bowl. And that proved that there's a difference in a game manager like Jared Goff and a game changer like Matthew Stafford. Okay? Now, even though I agree with Cam Newton that Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, and Jared Goff and Dak Prescott at times throughout his career, even though I agree with Cam that these are game managers, that doesn't mean that there aren't times when these quarterbacks who are game managers have great performances. Okay? Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, and Dak Prescott can have a great performance. You can even win a Super Bowl with these quarterbacks. But the biggest difference in a game manager and a game changer is, to me, and I said this yesterday, I was on a post, and I made the post about the whole, Cam Newton's comments on Purdy, Tagovailoa, Goff, and Dak Prescott. And someone asked me, they said, what is your definition of a game manager compared to a game changer? And it was my guy, my boy Raphael Haynes. If you go check out the 3-Point Conversion podcast on all social media platforms, he asked me, what's the difference in a game manager and a game changer? I'm going to read this what I said. I said, to me, a game manager is a system player, a player who thrives in a system, and their success is based around a system, not their individual talent/skill set. In my eyes, your team cannot win with a game manager if your team has a lot of deficiencies. A game changer, on the other hand, can thrive in any system based on their individual talent/skill set. And honestly, you can win with a game changer even if your team has significant deficiencies. Now, you want me to name the quarterbacks in the NFL who I believe are game changers? It's only a few of them. It's only a few. Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts is starting to elevate into being a game changer for me. Jalen Hurts as well. Aaron Rodgers, when he's healthy, is also a game changer. And that's it. That's it. Matthew Stafford, to me, he's starting to, you can tell that Matthew Stafford is out of his prime. Even though he had a great performance against the Ravens last week, Matthew Stafford, to me, is no longer necessarily a game changer. He can still have some moments. But those are my game changers to me. Like the elite quarterbacks, top tier. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Aaron Rodgers. Those are the top tier quarterbacks and the game changer who I feel like are quarterbacks you can win a Super Bowl with, despite what your roster looks like. But Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, and Dak Prescott prior to this season are quarterbacks you need things around them to be working properly in order for your team to contend for a Super Bowl. So I agree with Cam Newton on 75% of what he said. The only exception would be Dak Prescott this season. But I agree with Cam Newton 100% about Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, and Jared Goff. 49er fans want to give me that stuff about Brock Purdy and Brock Purdy being an NFL MVP candidate. What happened to Brock Purdy in those 3 games without Trent Williams, without Deebo Samuel, with the unhealthy Christian McCaffrey? What happened to Brock Purdy? 0-3, had his worst stretch of football during the season. Oh, Tua is a game changer. You're disrespecting Tua. Before Mike McDaniel arrived in Miami, Brian Flores was recruiting Deshaun Watson and Tom Brady to come in quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Before Tyreek Hill arrived in Miami, Tua Tagovailoa wasn't even viewed as a franchise quarterback. Oh, you're disrespecting Jared Goff. What happened when Jared Goff left the Rams? The Rams traded for Matthew Stafford, and they traded a game manager for a game changer, and they won a Super Bowl. We got to stop acting like all these dudes are equivalent or on the same stratosphere. They're not. They're not. Yes, these game managers can have moments where they perform like a game changer, but as an overall player and their individual skill sets, these game managers are not on the same level as these game changers that I recently just named.